Hello? Are you ready to hear the story of three little squirrels? Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, in the midst of straw and hay, when birds were town criers and squirrels were barbers, there lived three little squirrels in a small hut with their mothers. As time passed, the little squirrels grew, and it was time for them to leave the hut where they were born and raised to live their lives in the embrace of nature. One day, the mother squirrel called her offspring to her side. "My dear children, you have all grown, and it is time for you to leave this home where you were born. You need to sustain your own lives within the embrace of nature. I have a piece of advice for you. Never forget it. Always remember to live by it. Whatever you do, always do your best." The squirrels had to bid farewell to their mothers when they woke up to a new day. With a mix of sadness and eager anticipation, they began walking towards the forest. They walked a little, they walked a lot, they crossed hills and valleys. Eventually, they found a safe place where they could build their own homes. Everyone started thinking about how to build their homes. The first to announce his decision was the little squirrel. "I will make my house from straw," he said, "because it's effortless and very easy to build. I want to quickly finish my house and go play with the other forest creatures." The smallest squirrel finished building his house by gathering straw bales and called out to his siblings, "Hey, look over here, I finished my house." The largest squirrel came over to the little squirrel and said, "My dear sibling, this house you've built is not secure at all. In the smallest storm or wolf attack, you won't be protected in this house." The smallest squirrel, just like ignoring his mother's advice, also disregarded his brother's words. "Nothing will happen to me, don't worry," he said. Now it was the turn of the middle squirrel. He decided to build his house from logs. Gathering small pieces of branches, he constructed a wooden house. It turned out to be sturdier than his little brother's, but it couldn't be considered a very secure home either. After finishing his house, the middle squirrel called his brother, and his brother came over. "My dear sibling, your house looks nice, but it doesn't seem very secure. In a wolf attack, your house could collapse," said the older squirrel. The middle squirrel replied, "Nothing will happen to my house. I made it all from walnut and oak trees. You should take care of your own." The largest squirrel said, "The choice is yours. Our mother warned us, whatever you do, always do your best." The smallest squirrel and the middle squirrel quickly finished building their houses and were enjoying themselves. However, the largest squirrel was still in the process of building his house because he was constructing it from hard rocks. The two younger squirrels went to their older brother and said, "Come on, big brother, what you're doing is sheer cowardice. You're just building a house. Why go through all this trouble?" Ignoring his brother's words, the largest squirrel continued building his house. It took him a whole week to finish, the house made from hard rocks. Once upon a time, a hungry wolf arrived in the area where the squirrels lived. When he saw the hut made of straw, he immediately realized that someone was living inside. The little squirrel was sleeping in his hut, but he woke up suddenly upon hearing the growls of the wolf. The wolf knocked on the door and said, "Hey, squirrel, open the door. If you don't open it, I'll tear apart your straw bales with my claws, just like I did to them." The little squirrel replied, "My house is very sturdy. You can't do anything." The wolf began to scatter the straw bales with his claws, and the little squirrel, in a panic, threw himself outside, running straight to his middle brother's hut. The middle squirrel, as soon as he opened the door, let the little squirrel into his hut. The little squirrel said, "Close the door quickly, brother. The wolf might come here." The middle brother reassured him, saying, "Don't worry, this place is very safe. The wolf can't come here." The wolf, following the trail of the little squirrel, arrived at the hut made by the middle squirrel. "Hey, open the door, otherwise I'll come in and I'll tear you all apart with my claws," he said. The middle squirrel reassured him, "Don't be afraid, brother, he can't do anything." The wolf, angered, started to dismantle the boards with his claws. The two squirrels barely escaped from the hungry wolf's clutches and sought refuge in the house of the largest squirrel. The largest squirrel opened the door for his younger brothers and let them inside. The little squirrels were trembling with fear, worried about the wolf coming there too. The largest squirrel said, "Don't be afraid, my siblings. This place is very safe. Even if the wolf comes here, he can't harm us." The hungry wolf reached the door of the largest squirrel, knocked on it, but nobody opened the door for him. He growled, shouted, and called, but the squirrels paid no attention. The largest squirrel said, "Treacherous wolf, go away. Whatever you do, you can't enter this house because this house is very secure." No matter how much the wolf struggled, he couldn't destroy the house made of hard rocks by the largest squirrel. The hungry wolf started looking for other ways to enter the house, and he saw the chimney on the roof. He attempted to enter through the chimney. Realizing that the wolf was on the roof, the largest squirrel understood that the wolf could enter through the chimney. Immediately, he decided to light the fireplace beneath the chimney. As the wolf descended through the chimney, the smoke rising from below went into his throat. Choking on the smoke, the wolf threw himself outside in a desperate attempt and started running into the depths of the forest. The little squirrels, who had survived the attack of the hungry wolf, joyfully hugged each other. After some time, the three little squirrels encountered their mothers in the forest and shared the events that had transpired. The smallest squirrel and the middle squirrel hugged their mothers and apologized. "Mommy, we're sorry. We didn't listen to your advice and we almost lost our lives. In this short time, we've learned a lot, and you were right. Whatever we do, we should always do our best," they said. The smallest squirrel, who went to his mother, said, "You were right, Mum. In this world, whatever we do, we should do our best." The little squirrels, promising their mothers, never behaved lazily again. Like their older brother, they began to do everything meticulously, striving to do their best. From that day on, the little squirrels never behaved lazily. They worked diligently, leading a happy and secure life in the forest. And beautiful children, kids, the story has come to an end. Kids, now we are going to listen to the adventure of Pinocchio. Once upon a time, in a very old era, in a small town, there lived an elderly toy maker named Geppetto. He made a living by selling the wooden toys he crafted. The only thing that saddened the old toy maker in life was not having a child of his own. He would give anything to have a child. One day he went into the forest to find a suitable log to make a new toy. Suddenly, he found a log just like the one he was looking for. "Here is a log, just like what I was looking for. I will make a beautiful puppet with this," Geppetto exclaimed happily as he carried the log on his back and brought it to his toy shop. He placed it on the workbench and began to carve. As Geppetto masterfully carved the log, he heard sounds like "oh, oh" coming from the wood. Geppetto wondered, "Where is this sound coming from?" He thought to himself, "Maybe it's just my imagination." Then the puppet's head, followed by its body, arms and legs, started taking shape. Geppetto finally finished the puppet, placing it on the chair. As he started cleaning up the workshop, he heard a voice say, "Hello." He turned his head to understand where the sound was coming from, but there was no one in the room except the puppet sitting on the chair. Thinking he was mistaken again, he continued his work. Shortly after, the puppet jumped off the chair and began to dance around the room. Geppetto, astonished, couldn't believe his eyes. "Oh my God, this puppet is alive, just like the child I wanted," he said. Although not made of flesh and bone, the puppet laughed, ran, and played just like a real child. Geppetto took the puppet child in his arms and said, "You are just like a real child. Your name shall be Pinocchio." From that moment on, Geppetto's days were never dull as he spent them caring for Pinocchio. After a while, Geppetto thought that Pinocchio should go to school. However, Pinocchio didn't have any books or pencils, and Geppetto had no money. In order to provide for Pinocchio, Geppetto sold his coat and used the money to buy school supplies for him. "Take this money, my son, and buy yourself notebooks and pencils. Go to school nicely," he said. Pinocchio took the money in his hand and set off on his way. He walked with joy, looking around with curiosity, observing the shops, market stalls, and shouting people along the way. Meanwhile, a crowd at the beginning of the road caught his attention. Pinocchio dove into the crowd to find out what was happening. In front of the crowd was a big, colorful tent, the new circus in town. The clown in front of the tent was shouting to attract customers. Pinocchio, curious about what was inside the tent, wanted to enter, but the clown told him he couldn't go in for free. Since Pinocchio was very curious about what was inside, he extended the money given to him by Geppetto for school. As he entered, he saw puppets performing on the stage, set up in the middle of the tent. "Hey, these are like me, made of wood," he exclaimed as he stepped onto the stage among the puppets. The crowd watching the puppets scolded Pinocchio, saying, "Get out of there, you're blocking our view of the stage." However, the circus owner, seeing a live puppet without strings attached above the stage, was delighted. He thought, "A puppet that can move without strings will make me a lot of money." As soon as the play ended, he captured Pinocchio and locked him in a cage. Pinocchio, realizing that his misfortunes were the result of not heeding Geppetto's advice to go to school, began to cry, thinking that none of this would have happened if he had followed his father's words. The good fairy, seeing Pinocchio's remorse, immediately went to him and said, "You shouldn't have disobeyed your father's words. But I see that you regret your actions. I will save you, but never misbehave again. And here is the money you gave to the circus. Don't waste it in vain. Go to your school, be a good boy." And she led Pinocchio out of the circus. Pinocchio, with the money in his hand, started his journey towards school, singing a song. The cunning fox and his friend the cat noticed Pinocchio's cheerful demeanor and decided to approach him, saying, "Why, Pinocchio, where are you going so happily?" Pinocchio replied, "I'm going to buy myself notebooks and pencils for school." The fox asked, "Do you have money to buy notebooks and pencils?" Pinocchio showed the money his father had given him. Seeing the money, the fox and the cat decided to play a trick to take the money. They asked Pinocchio, "Have you bought notebooks and pencils, Pinocchio?" Pinocchio, knowing that he had lost the money to the cunning fox, lied, "Yes, I bought notebooks and pencils and left them at school." As he lied, his nose began to grow longer. Despite the fairy warning him not to lie, Pinocchio continued to fabricate more lies, and his nose kept growing. His head became so twisted that he couldn't turn it in any direction. Finally, realizing his mistake, Pinocchio told the truth to the fairy, who, in turn, restored his nose to its original size. Casting a spell, the fairy made sure the money Pinocchio lost to the fox returned to his hands. Warning Pinocchio, she said, "Don't spend this money in vain. Go to your school." And then she disappeared. Pinocchio, with the money in his hand, resumed singing as he walked. As he passed through a deserted place, he heard someone laughing loudly. At the same time, the circus owner, who had trapped him before, appeared, saying, "Come here, you naughty boy. I don't know how you escaped last time, but now I will give you your punishment." And he threw Pinocchio into the sea. When Pinocchio fell into the water, he remained on the surface. He didn't sink because, being a puppet made of wood, the water buoyed him up. Enjoying staying afloat on the water, Pinocchio moved his arms and legs, swimming happily. Passing near the shore, he heard someone laughing loudly. Suddenly the circus owner appeared, saying, "Come here, you naughty boy. I don't know how you escaped last time, but now I will give you your punishment." and he threw Pinocchio into the sea. Pinocchio, when thrown into the water, stayed on the surface, not sinking because the water buoyed him up. He enjoyed floating on the water, moving his arms and legs, swimming happily. While swimming toward the shore, something happened. Pinocchio found himself in a dark place. It turned out that a giant fish had swallowed Pinocchio. Now Pinocchio was inside the fish's stomach. Pinocchio stayed there, and let's go back to Geppetto. Geppetto, worried about Pinocchio not coming home, was very curious. He had sold his coat to send Pinocchio to school and fell ill. He set out on the road, searching for his son despite his illness. Finally, he reached the place where Pinocchio had been thrown into the sea. He asked the fishermen if they had seen his son. The fishermen told him that they saw the circus owner throwing Pinocchio into the sea. Geppetto, an experienced fisherman who knew Geppetto as a good person, did not refuse his plea for help in finding his son by venturing out to sea in a boat. They got on a boat together and sailed into the sea. After a while, a strong wind blew, and the growing waves overwhelmed the boat, causing it to capsize suddenly. Geppetto and the fisherman found themselves amidst the waves. Geppetto, being old and not knowing how to swim, began to sink towards the bottom of the sea. Meanwhile, the fish that had swallowed Pinocchio also swallowed Geppetto. Geppetto entered the fish's stomach by slipping through its throat. In the fish's stomach, Geppetto heard the cries of a child. Recognizing the voice, he realized it was his son Pinocchio. Overjoyed at finding his son, Geppetto hugged Pinocchio, who was crying in the fish's stomach. "Pinocchio, my son, I'm your father, Geppetto. I'm so relieved that you're alive. I missed you so much." Pinocchio, hearing his father's voice, cried and embraced him, saying, "I apologize, dear father, for not following your words. Please forgive me. I promise never to stray from your words again." Seeing Pinocchio genuinely remorseful, the fairy decided to rescue them. She pulled Geppetto and Pinocchio out of the fish's stomach, saving them. Overjoyed at their escape, Pinocchio and his father headed home. From that day on, Pinocchio became a very wise child, never straying from his father's words. He went to school every day and, after school, rushed to help his father with his work. The fairy, witnessing Pinocchio's transformation into a good child, decided to reward him. She cast a spell, turning Pinocchio from a puppet made of wood into a normal child made of flesh and bone. The enchantment worked, and one night, as Pinocchio was about to sleep, he realized he had turned into a regular child. He jumped out of bed in joy and ran to his father. Upon seeing Pinocchio as a real child, Geppetto was overwhelmed with happiness. "Finally, I have a real son," he exclaimed, embracing Pinocchio with tears of joy. Father and son lived happily ever after. We've come to the end of this story. Don't forget to subscribe to Grandpa's YouTube channel and listen to his fairy tales. Good night, kids.